and other international organizations, and in general with all of the involved parties. I remind you that part of what we're doing is also a technical accompaniment with several of the countries to achieve this. And we have been generating general digital policy frameworks that are focused on digital rights, including women and girls online. Also, to improve accessibility is that we don't only have connectivity, but also it should be affordable. That is affordable for the different regions, the different countries, and that is accompanied with the capacity building processes. We're talking that that knowledge needs to be developed, those basic skills in the use of technology, and in one way or another, it could work as a mechanism to create those capacities and could participate precisely in the fields of study of science, technology, engineering, math. So within that process, we're looking to get included leadership topics to encourage and promote women to be part of those decisions, business entrepreneurs. And we see that in the areas that are farther away, in many places, the head of the family is are women. So we need to take into consideration to ensure that they are developing inclusive and safe spaces online, and those mechanisms are developed in order for them to participate, or in many cases, that it could help reducing online violence against women. A result of this work of security process. I don't want to extend my speech. It's just in general what we have been working in the detail and what we're promoting with our partners as CTU, and in this case as SMA. I want to highlight that active participation. I want to thank our Vice President of Now, who I congratulate for the excellent work that she has been carrying out. Dr. Kim Malaliu, that is the Vice President of Now for the Development Sector, ITUD, and Mrs. Jennifer Manner, that is the Vice President of Now for the Radio Communications Sector. And their continuous and tireless efforts in coordinating and developing activities and training programs like this one, in preparing young professionals and female leaders in the sector that could actively represent our administrations as well as their businesses, and also to encourage female participation in decision making, leadership, and negotiations in upcoming assemblies and world conferences. I take this opportunity to welcome the chairperson of the Study Group 12 of ITU, Ms. Tania Vila, who is joining the efforts of the Americas Women's Network, focused on the standardization sector, ITU. She actively represented us in the working group on women in standardization, WISE. The CITEL Secretariat agrees and is following with the mandate received in the ComCITEL in the consultative committees, and is working on the creation of a gender and youth site on the CITEL's website with resources that we will launch very soon. Additionally, we're implementing the PCC1 mentorship program to ensure the continuity of CITEL's procedures and compliance with statutes and regulations. This includes preparing new delegates for CITEL's work, and initially for the participation in assemblies and world conference from the ITU. Also carrying out virtual seminars without cost. We are conducting free online seminars and awarding scholarship for telecommunications ICTs related diplomas that promote professional development for young and new professionals in this sector. We invite you to pay attention to the webpage where that information is normally published, and the information that we send so we can have professionals that are participating. These coming years bring us more challenges, and but we need to reinvent ourselves all the time to be able to comply with the goals that that we have, and it is very nice. I'm really happy to have these partners, to have these people that are working with CITEL for us to be able to achieve this goal that we have in the defense of human rights, guaranteeing the security and driving development in the area of the Americas. Thank you for being here this morning, and I wish you all success in this morning program.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Gracias. Señor Taylor.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Sí, buenos días.
Let me just Good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Buenos días, espero que me puedan escuchar bien.
A warm welcome to this pivotal training course on bridging.
Bienvenidos a este curso tan importante, el Cerrando la brecha de género en conectividad.
I am honored to address you on behalf of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, one of the proud partners in this transformative initiative. First and foremost, I want to express our sincere gratitude to the organizers of the course for bringing together such a diverse and talented group of individuals committed to advancing gender inclusivity in technology. It is a privilege to join forces with organizations from across the globe united by a common goal: to ensure that the benefits of the digital age are accessible to all, regardless of gender. CTU has collaborated with respect to capacity building with GSMA for several years, including training sessions in the Internet of Things, Internet governance. We've also done a lot of work in the Spectrum Management Task Force, and in particular, as we prepare for the World Radio Conference 2023 in Dubai. And let me express my sincere appreciation for this very strong collaboration and support, and long may it continue. The theme of this training course, Bridging the Mobile Gender Gap, strikes at the heart of a crucial issue in our ever-evolving technological landscape. In the Caribbean and beyond, we have witnessed remarkable progress in the field of telecoms and information technology. Mobile devices and the internet have become integral parts of our daily lives, driving innovation, economic growth, and social transformation. However, we must also recognize that not everyone is reaping the full benefits of this digital revolution. Very recently, I received an email from a gender, trade, and financial inclusion expert, someone with whom I have collaborated in the past. And the email said, in part, "Dear SG Taylor, I have read about recent initiatives launched, including CaribCoin, with others such as Dcash and M-Money with the telecom sector. I wanted to set up a call to see how these will engage women micro-entrepreneurs, enhancing financial inclusion for women, and also improving digital inclusion for women and other marginalized groups." End of quote. I had not thought about it, and so I reached out to the founders of CaribCoin, creators of the Carib Dollar, to add him to the discussion. He immediately saw this as an opportunity to build out the Carib Dollar network with women in micro, small, and medium enterprises across the region, and gave a commitment to reach out to her. It also dawned on me that this is a question we need to ask all of our partners as we move forward, so that our actions are more determined and systematic. The moral of the story is that the issue of bridging the mobile gender gap is really one of an opportunity for the Caribbean, and not a question of fulfilling some mandate from the United Nations or any other international obligations. It is in our collective social and economic interests. As partners in this initiative, we have a shared responsibility to address this issue head on. We must recognize that gender inclusivity is not just a matter of social justice. It is a strategic imperative for the advancement of our societies. The untapped potential of women in technology is an immense resource that we can no longer afford to overlook. Our region is rich in talent, and we must ensure that this talent is given every opportunity to thrive in the digital age. This training course represents a crucial step in our journey towards achieving gender parity in the technology sector. Over the next few days, we will delve into the key challenges, share best practices, and explore innovative solutions that can help us bridge the mobile gender gap. I encourage all of you to actively participate, engage in meaningful discussions, and build lasting connections with your fellow participants. The success of this course depends on our collective commitment to creating a more inclusive digital future. In closing, let me emphasize that the work we embark upon today is not just about technology, it is about creating a world where everyone, regardless of their gender, has the opportunity to thrive, contribute, and succeed. Together as partners, we can make this vision a reality. Thank you for your dedication to this important cause. I look forward to the valuable insights and collaborations that will emerge from this training course. Let us embark on this journey together, united in a pursuit of a more inclusive and equitable digital future. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, SG Taylor. Mr. Gayito.
Thank you very much, Francola. Thank you very much, Rodney and Oscar, for your kind words. Bienvenidos a todas y a todos. Thank you for the introductions. And I would like to extend the warm welcome to everyone joining today's webinar. And I give you special thanks to our co-organizers, the Inter-American Telecommunications Commission, CTEL, and the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, CTU, who helped make this session possible. So I would like to start, and I will try to be brief, but I would like to start with the purpose. Why are we here today? Well, we are gathered here today to ensure that all women in the Latin American and Caribbean can access the benefits of connectivity. We know that mobile internet use is transforming lives and helps empower women in this region. Mobile has helped women feel more connected, autonomous, and safer, providing access to information, services, and life-enhancing opportunities to bring significant benefits to the economy, while at the same time contributing to the achievement of the SDGs. As we witness this incredible advancement brought about by technology, it is imperative that we also recognize and address the disparities that exist, which hinders the progress of gender equality. And I have a professional bias. I'm an engineer, and I always like numbers. You know, I think numbers are strong. And the GSMA's latest data indicates that today, across low and middle income countries, women are 19% less likely than men to use mobile internet and 17% less likely than men to own a smartphone. In the Latin American and Caribbean region, this gender gap in mobile internet use is only 2%, meaning that women are 2% less likely than men to use mobile internet. So while adoption of mobile internet seems to be more equal in the region, there are still gender gaps. Our data observed in all LMICs surveyed by the GSMA tell us that once women are online, they tend to use their phone less frequently and for a narrower range of activities than men. These gender gaps are not going to close on its own. So target intervention is needed from all stakeholders to better measure, understand, and address the challenges that perpetuate the digital gender divide. So what is GSMA doing on this issue? At the GSMA, which is the Global Association of Mobile Operators, for those that doesn't know us, we take this challenge very seriously. We have a whole program dedicated to digital inclusion and the empowerment of women. So within our digital inclusion team, we have our GSMA Connected Women program, which works closely with the mobile industry, policymakers, and other partners to drive efforts to accelerate digital and financial inclusion for women across LMICs. And I would like to finish my introduction by highlighting the importance of collaboration. And I think Oscar made the point here. So collaboration is critical, as no one stakeholder can solve this challenge alone. That is why we are thrilled to be partnering with CTEL, with CTU, to raise awareness about the digital gender divide in Latin America and the Caribbean, and showcase what policy levers and other actions are available to governments to bridge this mobile gender gap. So I would like to call for action over the next 7 weeks as you go through the Bridging the Mobile Gender Gap online course. It is our hope that the insights and the recommended actions featured in the course will inspire concerted efforts to reduce the digital divide. There has never been a more urgent time to do so. We must work together, act boldly, and accelerate our collective efforts to close the mobile gender gap. Thank you very much, Francola.
You're mute, Francola.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the leadership of the partnering organizations for their remarks, with a clear commitment to ensuring that the goals that we set out to achieve will be done. Connected Impact Women, a video produced by GSME. This video captures the importance and urgency of achieving digital gender equality and describes how mobile is creating a better future. It also contains a special message from GSME's Director General, Mr. Max Grignard. The link to the video has been placed in the chat for your viewing. As we move on with the agenda, it is indeed a pleasure to introduce the next lineup of speakers, women who truly represent the region globally in ICT Fora, to share an update from the ITU networks of women and the collective work being done to accelerate women digital inclusion in the Americas within the framework of the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union. On this panel, I introduce Dr. Kim Malaleo, Vice Chairwoman of the Network of Women for ITU-D, Dr. Tanya Villa, Chair of ITU-T Study Group 12, and Ms. Jennifer Manna, the Americas Regional Co-Chair of the Network of Women for the World Radio Communications Conference, WRC 23, who will present via pre-recording. It is my pleasure. Dr. Malaleo.
Many thanks, Francola, and warmest of greetings to our partners and guests today. You would recall that all 193 UN member states signed on to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, which recognize that gender equality and women's rights and empowerment play a central role in sustainable development. As the UN Specialized Agency for Information and Communication Technologies, ICTs, the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, has a critical role to play in ensuring that the benefits of relevant technologies are equally available and accessible to girls and women as they are to boys and men. And indeed, it plays its role in advocating for, supporting, and enabling gender equality through its many spheres and channels of influence on a global scale, as well as within the organization itself. The ITU's commitment is enshrined in very many resolutions of its plenipotentiary, PP, as well as its development and standardization sectors, ITU-D and T, respectively, and in the declaration of the radio sector, ITU-R. And this year, the Union celebrates its 25th anniversary of commitment to gender. Happy anniversary, ITU. You may be familiar with some external initiatives such as Girls in ICT Day, Girls Can Code, and Women in Cyber, all excellent initiatives, but there are several more. Recognizing the need for gender balance in all phases of the telecommunications and ICT product and service life cycles, as well as the persistent underrepresentation of women in leadership roles in the longitudinal activities associated with ITU's statutory meetings. The Union has established networks of women, referred to as the NOWs, in its three sectors: development, standardization, and radio. The Network of Women in ITU-D, Network of Women in ITU-T, and Network of Women for WRC, respectively. Very interestingly, I am excited about this, a new network of women digital ministers led by the Secretary General, our own Doreen Bogdan Martin, is being developed as instructed by PP Resolution 70, Bucharest 2022. The ITU makes provision for representatives from its 6 regions in its networks of women. In the Americas, these are nominated by CITEL, and each leads the respective regional chapter. Shortly, we will hear, as Francola has said, from Jennifer Manna, USA, AM's regional co-chair for now for WRC, and Tanya Via, who chairs ITU-T Study Group 12. As I am the vice chair of the advisory board for now in ITU-D and chair of its Americas chapter, I'm happy to share with you a little bit about us. The Now in ITU-D encourages women to take on leadership roles and supports them in these roles through, among other things, the promotion of gender-balanced participation in the ITU development sector, with a keen focus on activities relating to the World Telecommunication Development Conference, WTDC, the facilitation of a community where female delegates support each other, expand their network, advocate, and share experience and knowledge. Mentorship by experienced professionals to strengthen the leadership base of women in the digital space. And facilitation of visibility for women in the sector. Now in ITU-D continues to hold various activities within, most recently, and on the sidelines of statutory meetings of the ITU. That is meetings, power sessions, lunches, mentoring, and social activities. The Network of Women in ITU-D for the Americas region is an informal community of women and men with a shared interest in the support for and preparation of women for meaningful participation and leadership in the activities of the ITU, including but not limited to WTDC and the plenipotentiary statutory conferences. We have facilitated several activities over our short lifetime, including within and on the sidelines of statutory meetings of CITEL. And we continue to work very closely with the CTU, are thrilled at the appointment of Francola John as the focal point for gender, in particularly with reference to the ITU-D Network of Women. We also facilitate in the Americas chapter of the ITU, in the Network of Women in ITU-D, we also facilitate meetings, capacity building activities, a podcast series, and more through a mix of remote, hybrid, and face-to-face modalities. These include, but are by no means limited to, pre and post ITU statutory meetings. So we hold meetings prior to and following ITU statutory meetings to prepare and to analyze. We hold virtual happy hours, and we held a very, very potent series, a WTDC weekly series, as a lead up to the WTDC 2022 in Rwanda last year. Featured speakers include Vanessa Copetti Cravo from Brazil, Cristiana Camarate, Brazil, Andrea Mamprin Grippa, Brazil. You would know these names of power women. Teresita Palacios, Paraguay, Olga Madruga Forti, USA, Akua Fortune in Trinidad and Tobago, myself, Trinidad and Tobago, Rodney Taylor, SecGen of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, Bernadette Lewis, SecGen of the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization. The podcasts provide frank, potent, and yet endearing guidance on the preparation for participation, not only in WTDC, but in leadership roles in the telecommunications sector within our organizations, sub-region, region, and the world in general, and encourage the participation actively in these activities. Now in ITU-D collaborates closely with the CITEL Secretariat the CITEL Working Group on Gender Equality and Meaningful Youth Empowerment, and as mentioned before, the CTU on our shared interests. And we have formulated a comprehensive mentoring program for PCC1, which you will hear lots more about later. We are thrilled to have collaborated with the CITEL Secretariat, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, and GSMA to host the Bridging the Mobile Gender Gap Capacity Building Program, comprising this introductory webinar, the self-paced online course, and the closing webinar on the 26th of October. This program has been formulated specifically for the Caribbean and Latin America, and I thank you, CITEL, I thank you, CTU, I thank you, GSMA, and all of our guests today. Back over to you, Francola.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maladiyo. I now invite Dr. Bia to present.
Thank you, Francola, and good morning, everyone. And thank you to CITEL, CTU, and GSMA for the invitation to participate in this panel, where I am proudly representing the ITUT sector as one of the study group chairpersons. Buenos días a todos y todas. I should start by saying that ITUT stands for ITU Telecommunication Standardization Sector, and its primary objective is to develop non-discriminatory international standards, also known as ITUT recommendations. Standards are important because they define the ICT infrastructures in terms of interoperability and improved performance. It is critical that these standards are produced in an efficient and timely manner to cover all the new technologies and services that continue to emerge. ITUT produces standards with the help of the study groups that assemble experts from all around the world to work under a contribution-led, consensus-based approach, in which all countries and companies, no matter how large or small, are afforded equal rights to influence the development of these ITUT recommendations. For ITUT, the World Telecommunications Standardization Assembly, WTSA, sets the overall direction and structure for ITUT. It meets every 4 years and defines the general policy for the sector, establishes the study groups, their work program, and appoints their chairman and vice chairman. Currently, in ITUT, there are 11 study groups whose work ranges from economic and policy issues, multimedia, protocols and testing, quality of service, future networks, smart cities, and security, just to mention some. Now, with respect to today's topic, and to understand women participation and involvement in ITUT, I can give you some numbers that can illustrate the problem. At WTSA, women's representation reached just above 30% in 2022. While this represents an improvement compared to previous WTSAs, we'll still need to do better. Participation of women in ITUT events is around 30%. But if we look at participation in the study groups, the number goes down to 20% in 2023. And in the study groups, currently, myself, I'm acting as the only woman chairing one of these groups. Given these numbers, the director of the Telecommunications Standardization Bureau, the TSB, is committed to advance gender equality in ITUT, ensuring that the gender perspective is considered within standard-making processes. The TSB has established the ITU Women in Standardization Expert Group, WISE, which was launched at the meeting of the Telecommunications Standardization Advisory Group, TSAG, in February 2016. The objective of WISE is to promote women in standardization, telecommunication, ICTs, and related fields, and to recognize the men and women who have made a remarkable contribution in promoting the work of women in these fields. WISE held its first meeting during the WTSA 2016 in Hammamet, Tunisia, under the leadership of Dr. Rim Belhassin Sharif as their chair, and Young Yoon Kim as vice chair, who is also a chairperson for Study Group 20. Sadly, Dr. Rim has stepped down from her position and a new chair needs to be appointed. Recently, this WISE initiative in ITUT has been rebranded to NOW, Network of Women in ITUT, in an effort to harmonize the networks of women across the ITU sectors. While the website still refers to WISE, it will be updated regularly to reflect the current initiatives. I would like to take this opportunity to announce a couple of upcoming gender events in ITUT. There will be one Network Women in ITUT lunchtime event at the next TSAT meeting from the 26th of February to the 1st of March in 2024, and more details will be announced soon. There will also be one Now Tea event at WTSA 24 from the 15th till the 24th of October 2024 in New Delhi, India. Also, the theme for the World Telecommunication and Information Society Day in May 2024 is Gender Equality in Digital Transformation. In this regard, ITUT will actively be contributing and proposing valuable content. Finally, with respect to enhancing female delegates' participation via capacity building, ITUT is working to develop training programs specifically tailored for female delegates who will be attending WTSA 24. These training sessions are scheduled for 2024 and will aim to empower and equip them with the skills and confidence needed to actively engage in decision-making processes. The training sessions for women delegates will be part of the Bridging the Standardization Gap program and will be built on a similar model as a training provided for ITU Plenipotentiary and WTDC, but tailored to the ITUT community specifically. TSB will be setting up statistics targets for WTSA 24 and strategize to achieve better results than at WTSA 20. TSB will also encourage member states to submit candidatures for women in ITUT leadership positions at WTSA 24. And with these announcements, I conclude my presentation and I remain at your disposal for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pia. I would now ask for the video of Jennifer Manna to be introduced.
Not hearing the audio. Sorry, Celeste, we're not hearing the audio.
Can you give me 1 second, please?
Mary Celeste, would you like me to try?
Yes, please.
Okay. Forgive me.
My name is Jennifer Manner, and I'm the chair for
Can
CTEL's
you hear?
Network of Women for WRC 23
Yes.
for the ITU. Today, Now for WRC 23 is focused on creating gender equality and equity for women in the radio communication sector of the International Telecommunications Union. As you may know, the ITU, or the International Telecommunications Union, has three sectors: the telecommunications sector, which is primarily focused on standards; the development sector, whose goal is to help developing countries develop their communications infrastructure, services, and technologies; and the R sector, or the radio communications sector, which is focused on spectrum management. In the 30 or so years that I've been involved at the ITU radio communications sector, we've seen very limited growth in the number of women delegates participating at the ITUR, as well as women in leadership roles. So let me give you an example. At WRC, 1995, and WRC is the World Radio Communications Conference, which is the treaty-making body for the ITUR, where we make decisions on radio spectrum allocations, there were 18% women. Just at WRC 19, the last conference we had, there were similarly about 18% women. In addition, throughout the entire history of the international telecommunications R sector, there's only been one woman, a woman from Region 2, the CTEL region, Canada, Dr. Veena Rawat, who served as chair of a treaty-making conference. We've also had one woman, also of Canada, Cindy Cook, serve as chair of our conference preparatory meetings, both before the WRC and following the WRC kicking off this cycle. We've also only had a couple of women who've ever served as committee chairs. Our goal for now for WRC 23 and Network of Women generally for the ITUR is to increase participation by women as delegates and in leadership roles. Our goal for Work 23 is a little more specific. At WRC 19, Brazil proposed and had adopted a declaration on gender equality and equity. We are now going to this year's conference, and actually it's the meeting before the WRC, the Radio Communications Assembly, to try and get a resolution that talks about equality and equity for women at the ITU and generally in radio communications, technology, spectrum, use, and so forth. We feel that it is incredibly important that the ITUR sector takes an affirmative step forward in promoting women, which will help encourage countries and companies to send an increasing number of women as delegates to the conferences and to study groups, as well as to seek leadership roles. And I think this, we're already seeing some improvements. We have a couple of women who are running for committee chairs for this year's WRC. And we're hoping that in the near future, we'll once again have a woman who chairs a WRC and that this will become more commonplace. I truly believe that with Doreen Bogdan's election as Secretary General of the ITU, that certainly puts us a step forward overall in the International Telecommunications Union. I did want to touch on a couple of things that we in CTEL do with the Network of Women for WRC 23. The CTEL PCC2 for a number of years has had a mentoring program, and now we've expanded that to make sure we include as many women as possible. But we also put on informative and substantive programs. For instance, we've done training just the past couple of months in advance of the WRC 23. We have a PCC2 meeting going on right around now, and we're going to have a panel to hear about how to be successful at the WRC 23. And we really do believe it's important to share expertise from people who've been there, but also from people who are still up and coming with our members of the Now for WRC. And we are not limited, of course, to only supporting women. We, of course, support everyone who needs support at the ITUR, but our focus on our resolution for this year's conference is to get our gender resolution, and I'm very hopeful that we'll be successful. And thank you for letting me talk for a few minutes today, and enjoy the program.
back over to you, Francola. So sorry about that. To our guests, back over to Francola.
Thank you very much to our esteemed panel for enlightening us on the contributions and the work that we continue to do for full digital inclusion. The next speakers will present on how GSMA work to accelerate the digital and financial inclusion for women, and they will also share more information about the Bridging the Mobile Gender Gap course, including how it is structured and what you can expect to learn over the next 7 weeks. GSMA will also share a preview of some of the data that they have for Latin America and the Caribbean.
Thank you very much.
Following the presentation, we will dive straight into our question and answer segment. And again, to repeat, please place your questions in the chat and you will be asked to raise your hand if you would like to speak and unmuted. Allow me to introduce the speakers. Mr. Malou Bonestiga, Director of Policy and Advocacy, GSMA, and Mr. Senior Advocacy Manager for Connected Women, GSMA. Malou, thank you.
Thank you so much, Francola, for that introduction. And it's really great to see everyone online here. The fact that we're all together here is because of a conversation that started this initiative and then the dedication of all the partners bringing everyone together to move forward. So it really shows that with the will of partners, we can make things happen. So let me first introduce a little bit about what the GSMA is doing in terms of digital inclusion and gender equality. Because as was mentioned in the introduction, bridging the digital divide and the gender digital divide in particular is not just a matter of social justice. There's also an economic and commercial imperative to achieve this. So the industry recognizes this importance, and therefore as a GSMA, we have 2 programs focused on digital inclusion, with the Connected Women program focused on bridging the digital gender divide and accelerating financial inclusion of women. And it's quite unique what our program does because we bring together the private sector partners across low and middle income countries with the development community, because we try to find solutions with a social benefit, but also solutions that make business sense. So our programs are funded by UK's FCDO and Sweden's SIDA, but we also work together with other donor partners such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And in our program, we have a 3-step approach to what we do. So it all starts with insights, research, and data to inform the action, both of the private sector, raising awareness about the challenge, but also of to inform policies and policy making. The second pillar of our program is focused on supporting mobile operators, but also innovators and other partners in the private sector to identify, but then also address the challenges to the digital gender divide. And we have a few programs that maybe Pippa can share a little bit more about later. And then finally, we focus on advocacy and policy. So this is about increasing awareness, but also affecting change at the policy level. So we do that both at the national level. We work with many governments, but also like today, we work with international partners. Next slide, please. So when we think about what we do at a policy level, we have a quite comprehensive approach when we try to affect change. So it all starts with the data. So we have a number of unique data sources that the GSMA gathers year on year. So since 2017, we've been doing this, really sizing the gender gap to better understand what are not only the size of the challenge, but also what is underlying that challenge and what is the impact of certain interventions. So on this slide, you can see a number of the data sources that we have. So it's a mobile gender gap report. We do consumer surveys. So that's really at the individual face-to-face level. But we also have at the national level, mobile connectivity index, which has 42 indicators on enablers to connectivity. Then we have a pillar on policy expertise. So as part of the policy expertise, that's what you're all part of today. It is the capacity building course that we developed specifically for policymakers. But also we develop policy insights and best practices. We often do this together with different partners. So this can be the World Bank, we work together with the ITU, but also regional development banks, for example. Then, because of our unique position as a GSMA, we try to bring together the private and public sector stakeholders in identifying these challenges that exist, but also to come up with joint solutions, because none of these challenges that we face today can be tackled by one single actor. So it's very important to have that dialogue and have everyone at the same table to advance change. And of course, we cannot have impact without implementation. So we have a number of tools that we are developing and have already developed. For example, the Mobile Internet Skills Training Toolkit. This already has impacted 65 million people across low and middle income countries who had no basic digital skills and who are now able to use the mobile internet for the first time. So it's just to say that as a GSMA, we do have a digital inclusion program, and we do have a very dedicated approach to help bridge the barriers, or help bridge that gender divide and tackle the barriers to digital inclusion of women. So I want to give that introduction first before handing over to Pippa, who will share a little bit more about the course and some insights on the gender divide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Meli, for that introduction, and welcome everyone to the start of the course. So I'll walk you through a bit about what you can expect from the course, how it is structured, and some of the content and learning objectives that you can expect to see and learn from. So we structured this course around 3 key areas, and the first is all about understanding the issue. So what is the mobile gender gap? What is its size? What are the drivers impacting the mobile gender gap? And why is it urgent that we address it? The second part is solutions oriented. It focuses on how you, as policymakers and regulators, can go about addressing this gender gap. So here we'll share in part 2 various policy levers that are available to you. We'll also share recommendations as well as examples from other country contexts, so you can learn what other governments are doing as well on this issue. And then lastly, the most important part is taking all of the insights that you've learned, all of the data that you will have seen, and creating an action plan to reduce this mobile gender gap within your own country. So as of today, this course opens. All of this content you'll be able to access online today. And my colleague, if you have not yet registered for this course, because it's a separate registration link, my colleague Meli will just drop it in the chat box so you can be sure to not miss this 7 weeks of online content. So the data that underpins the course, and some that I'll preview with you today, it comes from our annual GSMA consumer survey data. And this data is nationally representative. We collect it, it's conducted face-to-face each year since we've been tracking it in 2017. The most recent survey countries covers 12 low and middle income countries at the end of last year. However, since we've started tracking it in 2017, we've surveyed 28 countries, and this represents 75% of the adult population in LMICs. Our survey gathers critical data on the mobile gender gap, so we can monitor how it shifts over time, but we also look at other demographic indicators, which are really key and gives us a bit more of a nuanced understanding of the challenge. So we look at not only gender, but location, education, occupation, and we can even segment by urban versus rural to see the different digital divides. And in this webinar, shortly, I'll preview some of this data. The online course focuses primarily on data from across low and middle income countries. So I'll focus today on highlighting some of the regional specific data for Latin America and the Caribbean. So I'll first start by giving you an overall state of digital inclusion over over LMICs, and then I'll zoom in to the regional data. So we know our data has shown us that more people are using mobile internet than ever before. However, we still see that there's a significant gender gap. We see that 61% of women in LMICs are now using mobile internet. So this is great news. However, when you compare this with men, you see that there's 75% of men in LMICs are using mobile internet. You can clearly see that there's a substantial gap, and this is why we're here today, to try to bridge that gap. And we calculate the gender gap by calculating the relative difference between those two percentages. And this describes how much less likely a woman is to use mobile internet than a man. And the result of this calculation, using the figures you see on screen, means that women across LMICs today are 19% less likely to use mobile internet than men. So we have an overall gender gap of 19%, and this is what we call the gender gap in mobile internet. As I mentioned, we've been tracking the gender gap over time. So since we started in 2017, you can see on the screen that it was as high as 25%. And each year it had been steadily decreasing and decreasing to the lowest point at 2020 of only 15%. And this was quite good news for gender equality because the gap was narrowing and more women were coming online. However, when we hit 2020, we saw that progress in closing the gender gap has stalled and the gap plateaued. So now, as of our latest data showing in 2022, women are 19% less likely than men to use mobile internet across LMICs. But of course, this gender gap varies significantly, both in terms of region, but also within countries in the region. So you can see the gap is highest in South Asia at 41%, and it's comparatively quite low in this region in Latin America and the Caribbean at 2%. So this means that in Latin America and the Caribbean, women are 2% less likely than men to use mobile internet. However, as I mentioned, despite this relatively small regional gender gap, it's important to remember that this is an average, and this will vary greatly depending on the region, depending on the country, and even specific localities within the country, let's say urban versus rural. So while we don't have many survey level data ourselves for many countries in this region, we use Facebook also we use Facebook data as a proxy for mobile internet, because most people, especially in LMICs, access internet via mobile. And secondly, Facebook is quite popular. Many people use it, which gives us a bit more of a nuanced understanding. So according to Facebook data, there's some countries in this region that have no gender gap at all. Brazil, for example. However, in other countries such as Haiti, we see that this gap can be as wide as 20%. So as I mentioned, even though the gender gap in mobile internet use in this region is 2%, still not everyone is connected. There's still a lot of work to be done. You can see on the screen in the black circle that 77% of women in this region are connected. But that means that 55 million women still remain unconnected and are not yet using mobile internet. This highlights that there's still quite a lot of work to do, and I'm really glad that you've taken interest in this course and you're joining us today. So let's dig deeper into what this means. So to better understand the mobile internet gender gap, we find it helpful to look at and understand the journey to mobile internet use. So before a woman can use mobile internet, she needs to have access to a device, a mobile phone, particularly a smartphone, to be able to access the internet. So we track the gender gap in overall mobile ownership, which is also 2%, as you can see on stage 1. And we also look at the gender gap in smartphone ownership, which is 5%. So this means that women in this region are 5% less likely than men to own a smartphone. And if you go down the mobile internet user journey, you have to have the phone, you have to be aware of what the internet is and its benefits, you have to access the internet, but we also look at how often women use the internet and for what use cases. And here is quite interesting. We see that women on average in this region spend 20% less on mobile services, and that includes voice, text, and mobile financial transactions. So this means there are gender gaps in this region, and we have a lot to work on as well. So now that we understand the size of the challenge, now I'll turn to why there is a gender gap. And we'll look at some of the barriers. Based on data from the survey countries, from our annual consumer survey, we see that there's consistently 3 top reported barriers to mobile internet use that women face in this region. And that is safety and security concerns. So this includes concerns about the negative aspects of the internet, be that harassment, be that fraud, theft, online security, cybersecurity. And what's important to note is this barrier is more prevalent in this region compared to other regions that we track. We also see affordability is quite prominent. We see that, and this barrier includes the inability to afford a device, and also inability to afford data plans and other service fees. And then thirdly, we see a lack of literacy in digital skills as a third prominent barrier to women's mobile internet use. So as you take the course, which opens today, you'll see in the course we'll go into a lot more detail about how you as policymakers, regulators can address these barriers, what you can do about it. And this course, as I mentioned, is 7 weeks in length. It's self-paced and it runs until the 26th of October. You can go at your own speed. It should only take you no more than 2 or 3 hours of study time per week. And as Kim and Francola mentioned earlier, we'll have a final live chat session where we can discuss, where we can talk about the action plans, and that's taking place as well on the 26th of October. My colleague will drop the link, the registration link to that in the chat box. And I just want to also highlight, we have a policy report which contains all of GSMA's recommendations on how to close the mobile gender gap. And we also have our flagship mobile gender gap report, which contains a lot more data if you're interested in learning more about this topic as well. So that concludes my presentation. And I'd like to give a big thanks to our co-organizers, CTEL, CTU, and also thanks to our donors, the UK FCDO and Sweden SIDA, who helped support our research and work on the mobile gender gap. So with that, I think we can have a bit of a discussion and go to Q&A. I would love to hear from you on what is your motivation for joining this course? How do you prioritize gender considerations in your country? Do the barriers that I stated resonate with what you see in your country? And this is also a chance to ask any practical questions about the course or to any one of the speakers. So I'll hand over to Francola, who will moderate this session of the event. Over to Francola.
Thank you very much, Pippa and Milou. I trust that this will excite you about what is to come over the next 7 weeks. Again, the aim is to help policymakers understand the size and drivers of mobile gender gap in low and middle income countries, and it will provide recommendations on how to improve digital inclusion for women. And we saw the numbers in our region, so we do have a lot more work to come. But before we get to the question and answer segment, we'd like to have a photo opportunity, and we would like to ask everyone to please turn on their cameras, those of you who can, so that the technical team can take a photo. And I would ask that those cameras come on and the photos be taken. I do have support of Ms. Shanae Lewis, and I don't know who else is on the call who can facilitate, but the CTU's technical team would give instructions. So if you can full smile. Who's on the call? Is it Michelle? Right? Let us know when. Shanae, would it be more than one screen? Do you have to move over for the other? We have 100 persons online, so fantastic participation. Thank you for the fantastic participation. And now we get into the real gist of today's webinar, the question and answer segment. And again, place your questions in the chat and we would have the presenters answer. But we do have 2 questions that we would like put forward. From Mexico, how can we promote or increase the participation of the Latin America region women within the board and events of the Network of Women? What institutional and societal changes need to be made? I would pose this question to our Network of Women representatives, the panel that spoke earlier, Dr. Kim Malaleo and Dr. Via. Can you take this question?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, but I wonder if you would allow me to share my screen, perhaps, and just to answer this question. I think the participation at the regional level is really, really important, and to do so within existing frameworks is also very important. So participation at the level of the sub-region, for example, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, CITEL, and then up to the ITU is very important. As Oscar mentioned, the Permanent Consultative Committee 1 of CITEL is about to launch its mentoring program. the PCC 2, Permanent Consultative Committee 2 of CITEL, has an ongoing mentoring program. The PCC1 program is outlined just in brief here, just what I have at hand. So this program, which comprises the online course bookended by the 2 webinars localized in the Americas region, is a sort of what we refer to as a precursor virtual seminar for the PCC1 mentoring program. It is followed by the online course. The launch announcement of the program will be made at the 43rd meeting of PCC1 in Paraguay in October. The call for mentors and mentees will be made the week after. We will close shortly after that with the reflection virtual seminar from this program, and then announce the cycle of mentor and mentee matches in January. And that will kick off the first cycle of mentoring in PCC1. The reason and we will populate our CITEL learning platform with a number of resources of different types. The reason I mentioned this in response to the question is that there is a pressing need for mentors, men and women, to sign up to the PCC1 mentoring program. It will be a very structured program that has very specific outcomes and metrics of performance. So this really is an early call for mentors in the region, that is CITEL, the Americas in general, as well as the associated subregions. And also it's a call for potential mentees, those persons who believe that they may contribute, but perhaps don't know quite, perhaps are not confident enough to, then I urge you to reach out to us. You can reach out to me and I'll put these contact points in the chat. Myself, from the Network of Women in ITUD, Maria Celeste from CITEL Secretariat, and Francola John from the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. So the starting point really is to get engaged within a formalized structure. And I would recommend very highly the PCC1 mentoring program. Back over to you, Francola.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malaliu. A question coming in from Michelle Marias. How representative is the GSMA data of the CARICOM English-speaking Caribbean region? I will pose this question to Pippa Omilu.
Yes, thank you for the question, and that is an important one. So our latest consumer survey data, we unfortunately do not collect data for many countries in the Caribbean region. However, we have data for some of those countries in previous years. But what we do look at to get the regional number is our data supplemented by third parties. So we look at Gallup data, which has data for each and every country in the region. And we also look at Facebook data as a proxy and a use case to get a more nuanced understanding. If I could also address the latest question in the chat, because I think they're quite related. Jamina has asked if I could highlight some specific actions that people can take and policymakers can take. And I think the biggest one is there's a acute need for more gender disaggregated data related to women's use of mobile internet, mobile money, and mobile services. And this is a great opportunity to collect this data to see what the nuances are in your own country. And to give you very concrete examples of how you could go about this, I can highlight 2 examples from other countries of how they went about this. The first was Zambia, who actually added a gender and ICT indicator into their national census. So they tracked the data that way. We also saw another country start to include specific gender indicators within their national ICT survey. So those are 2 examples of how you can go about collecting gender disaggregated data in your country. Back to you, Francola.
One question from Annie Baldeo. Will the course participants receive a certificate upon completion of this course?
Yes, so all participants, provided you make it through the content, you'll receive an online course certificate of completion, and you're welcome to post that on your LinkedIn and have it as evidence of professional learning.
Fantastic. That is really great to hear. Is there anyone else? I saw a participant came on shortly.
Francola, there's a question about the availability of the slides.
Correct.
So,
Of course, they will be available once we have your presentations. They would all be available on the CTU's website. And again, it will also be available on GSMA and CTEL's website as well. So immediately after the webinar, the presentations will be available. Yes? Any other questions?
Francola, I wanted also to compliment, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. I based on the questions that I read on the chat, I wanted to give only my 3 takeaways from all the information I've heard. I think there are 3 key issues to promote the participation of women in ITU in general. One is information, the second one is sorority, and the third one is dropping biases. And let me explain real quickly what I mean. Making information available for all the women out there is very important. And I think courses such as this one is a good way to bring the information to all the women that are working in ICT fields. I also believe that there's a need to give visibility to women and their achievements so that they can grow and reach the positions in decision-making processes. And I think once we have women in these positions, for example, at the national level, then we will be able to think about them as potential candidates for top-level positions at ITU, for example. And I also think that there's a bias in STEM careers, such as engineering, because culturally, we think that these careers are only for men. And if we don't see more girls in ICT field, then I think it will remain very difficult to bridge the gender gap. So what Kim was mentioning before about the mentoring program, I think it's very important because we have highly experienced women now in top-level positions, and it's very important to get this mentorship program so that they can take the new women and carry them to reach those positions. I just wanted to make that small.
Tarancina. Can we have
Sí, no sé si me escuchan.
Can you hear me? Basically, I believe that in addition to everything that has been said, is that perhaps using quality of information for women, because I'm talking from my case. Sometimes I do not see interesting things online that motivate me to get connected. So I think it is also important simultaneously encourage ourselves to upload information that attract women that do not get online. An example, I work with older adult groups, both men and women, and there are things that they don't like. They say that they're losing their time. So that along or aligned with the technological development, the quality of information is important. Thank you.
If you want, I can try. I will switch to Spanish.
Yes.
Sí, definitivamente
Yes,
acercar
definitely.
usos que se le da.
Getting this information and perhaps making wider the uses that is given to it, because the statistics show that we use internet for social media and the other uses are not shown. The IFT in Mexico, we have digital literacy courses to bring to different parts of the country. As said before, there are two realities, and I think that happens in all of the countries, happens in the urban areas and rural areas. So try and bring to the population the uses for education, health, or healthcare that the internet can have. I think that is very important. This kind of initiatives of courses, I think, can actually improve in terms of providing this information that you were talking about.
By Dr. Lawrence Duhanga. Would you like to be unmuted to give your latest study on gender disparity in universities? If you are online, put your hand up to be unmuted and give your comment. Right. While we
hi. Oh, thank you, Chair. I would like to try as much to be brief. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I did a study on disparities, gender disparities in public universities in Malawi, here in Malawi. And this covered about 6 public universities in the country. Now, the core interest of the study is to find out if there's any change, improvement from previous studies on gender disparities in universities. And I wanted to see if there's any improvement. But from the results of the study, it did show that although there's so much improvement in the country on penetration of mobile penetration in the country, but there's still huge disparity in the mobile usage, especially in universities, public universities. And I'd want to believe, of course, that depends on the data, that might be similar to other, non-public universities. But generally, the data showed that we still need to do more to reduce that disparity. And this is important because in an age whereby we were trying to increase usage of internet services, internet resources, and so forth, we can't have that still there. But at the same time, it showed the study did not look at why the reasons or the triggers of this gap. Maybe that's an opportunity for future study. But my hope would be that I looked at other studies which GSMA has even partnered with a national regulator in the past. But I haven't seen a study which focuses to look at not only the national scale, but look at what are the universities or maybe education institutes doing to help increase such disparities. I'd want to believe that maybe moving forward, we'll see more institutions deliberating putting systems which will help reduce gap at university level. And maybe implementing programs in rural settings. And here's the difference why. In rural areas, like we've seen in the studies we're doing right now, there's all these challenges, cultural challenges, and the list is endless. But at university level, here the group of students who are ready to change, to bring in changes. So if institutions or universities deliberately take this opportunity to try to reduce it, will help a lot. And that's what I wanted to comment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lawrence. We have one question. Do you have any focus on ICT education for older adults? And I'm thinking this would be for senior citizens. Any one of the speakers would like to tackle this question? Yes,
yeah, Francola, I also wrote on the chat that, for example, at the IFT, the regulator in Mexico, we do some special campaigns for senior citizens. And this is to teach them, for example, from how to use a smartphone, how to connect to the internet, how they can use to pay the bills, for example. We take these campaigns throughout the country and small villages, for example, or rural localities. Thank you.
Great, fantastic. Does the GSMA have a monetary representation of the potential loss of national revenue to economies where there is a mobile gender disparity around the 5% mark? This often plays a role in garnering political will around social justice matters. This would be great data in advancing policy developing mobile gender inclusivity. And I see Miller answered that question in the chat. Would you like to repeat what you have just said there, Miller? You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that's a very fair point to get traction and raise the level of urgency. It's always good to come up with a number. So we do have numbers on the potential upside. So we did a modeling about the potential impact on GDP. We don't have that by country. So those are also regional numbers. What we also did for the first time this year is looking at how many more women need to be connected to close that gender gap. So we can come up with actual numbers on what it means that we need to achieve. So we can have that by region and by country, depending on the data. So we're happy to also work if we don't have the data for a specific country. We can share the methodology that we have if stakeholders are interested. But to answer the question, we don't have a number on the cost, but we do see significant economic impact. So it's for the industry, for the mobile industry, it's a 230 billion revenue potential to close the digital gender gap by 2030. And I believe it's up over 700 billion over a period of 5 years in terms of GDP. So we do have those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Will. And as we look at the time, we'd like to wrap up the question and answer segment, but I want to give the commitment of the partners here, and if I can speak on behalf of all of them, that we are going to continue the discussion. We are going to encourage participants and even at the CTU member states to help us get that data, help us get the information that we need. So we will be reaching out to you. So I would like to thank GSMA, Malur, Pippa, and the presenters for an engaging question and answer segment. As we not only prepare for WRC, action must be continuous as we look forward to ITU's WTSA 24, WTDC 25, and PP 26. We must recognize that we all have work to do together towards the common goal. To close off today's webinar, it is a pleasure to invite again Dr. Kim Malaleo. As we mentioned before, a woman who works tirelessly on gender-related matters and who have been very instrumental in putting together these key stakeholders to make this webinar and the training course a reality. I now invite Dr. Malaleo to give the next steps.
Thank you very much, Francola. I'll be brief. I just want to thank all who have made today's first component of the Bridging the Mobile Gender Gap Capacity Building Program for the Americas region possible. CITEL, CTU, GSMA, our speakers and guests. This program captures our recognition of the need for evidence-based interventions to mitigate the multidimensional impacts of gender imbalance in the telecommunications and ICT sectors. It is not just a matter of gender, it is a matter of evidence. And equally importantly, this highlights the need, and Michelle Marius brought this to our attention. Equally important, this program highlights the need for the collection of gender disaggregated data. And Pippa has given us some examples, some tangible examples, so has Tanya, of how we can address that. So the collection of gender disaggregated data, and as you know, that requires action on the part of all agents and agencies in the ecosystem, public sector, private sector, academia, and the civil society. To wrap up, because we are now over, if you have not created your profile on the GSMA Learning Portal and registered for the online course, which has kicked off today, and will run until 26th of October. We invite you to do so through the link shared in the chat. We also urge you to register for the closing synchronous webinar, which will be held via Zoom on the 26th of October, 12 noon to 2 p.m. GMT-4. And the link has also been placed in the chat. Once you register at that link, you will be provided with the Zoom link for the actual session. I hope to see you all soon in the course and at the closing segment, and also for those in the Americas region in the PCC1 mentoring program. And that's it for me. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Malaliu. And in everything, we must give thanks. And on behalf of the Secretary General of the CTU Secretariat and the CTU, we'd like to thank the organizations that made this all possible. GSMA and the speakers, Pippa and Malu, along with Lucas. Thank you very much for your contributions today. And the Inter-American Telecommunication Commission, CITEL, Mr. Leon. We have Maria Celeste, who is also managing at the back end. And to you, our participants. We hope that if you have not registered for this yet, online course, that you may do so now and be part of the change. I invite you to visit CTU's website, where you can get all of the details at www.ctu.int. Again, it is a pleasure, and it was a pleasure being your moderator today. We thank you for joining us and have a great day. Thank you.
Recording stopped.